The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
All right. Thank you for joining us here today on another episode of Buckle Bombs Entertainment. With us, we have former wrestler, cosplayer, podcaster, author, and actress, April Hunter. How are you today, April?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's a pleasure. So we're going to talk about a few things here. And, we'll touch on your wrestling career. We'll talk on Kill City Cup. And, some cosplaying and whatever else we happen to think of along the way.
Awesome.
So now your first interest wasn't wrestling. You actually had bigger interest in other combat sports first. Karate and MMA, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, well, someone's done their homework. Wow. So when I was a kid, I'm impressed. When I was a kid, my parents put my brother in karate and he hated it and they couldn't get a refund. So they came to me. They're like, do you want to take the class? I'm like, yeah. So I guess girls did not take these classes back then, but I took it. I loved it, stayed in it. And that was my thing. And adjusting to pro wrestling after karate was weird, pulling the punches and not being uncomfortable with fighting on your back and landing on your back and falling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Yep.
Karate and MMA, you're going full force. Wrestling, it's not so much.
Yes, you're right.
Thinking back then, were you the only girl in your karate class?
I was. The instructor's daughters were there though. So I would often spar with them. And that was helpful. So hello there.
Hi, sorry I'm popping in a little late.
Oh no, it's okay. I was late too, so I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
So cool.
April 7th. We've only just started talking. April got her start actually in karate class before wrestling. So we're just touching on that a little bit.
Excellent. All right.
So in between the karate classes before joining WCW, what was that time frame like?
Oh gosh. Well, there was a big gap. So, I was into it, and then I hit my, teen years and party years, and then, or getting up on and watching the Bruce Lee theater with my brother wasn't as important anymore, and it was all, makeup and boys and dressing up and dancing around. And then I got back into it again later as I got older. But I was never really into professional wrestling. I always thought that was kind of forgive me if you're a wrestling fan, but I always thought it was kind of like just colorful and loud and people screaming at each other, that brother, and just very dude and weird, and it's just, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. And then I got into it by accident. I did Playboy, and I was in the same issue as Kimberly Page, and WCW ended up sort of recruiting me. So, and I was like, well, it's a job, and then it ended up being a career. So
that's how. Okay, so I was watching around that time, and I remember when you appeared, and it was kind of when all of the fitness models were there, like Madeja. I think they had Pamela Paul Shock around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, you got a memory. Holy hell! Yeah, we all got hired at the same time. We all came from the same area. We're all coming from the West Coast. We're all doing fitness, and we all got hired through the same process at the same time.
Awesome.
So,
no, not really being a fan. What was it like walking in? It's the first day on the job. As one of Scott Steiner's, birthday
freaks.
Yeah.
For me, it was just another job. Like, it's like, okay, where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to be? You know, what's the point here? So just tell me what to do. I'll do it. Because I've already been through, like, you know, acting and modeling and everything else. I didn't know that they had kind of thrown me in the deep end of the water and go, here, swim. But I think not knowing anything about wrestling and not knowing who anybody was kind of helped. Because I'm, you know, walking by, I didn't know Bret Hart from, like, dude in the next neighborhood. I had no idea. I was just like, hey, you know, what's up? Nice to meet you. I had no idea. So I wasn't starstruck and being stupid like I could have been, I guess.
Yeah, but I bet that kind of helps you in the locker room in a way, because I think a lot of people, even if you know came from the indies, you often are in a locker room with people that you've admired if you've watched as a fan, and sometimes the veterans are like, oh, another one kind of thing.
You know, it did and it didn't. You're right. It did help in some ways, but in other ways, I remember, like, I remember talking to Medusa. I had just met her, and, you know, I was, you know, I thought she was super cool, but I had no idea who she was. I remember Kevin Nash taking me aside, and he's like, hey, you know, she's really good. She's worked in Japan. She's one of the few women who's worked in Japan. Should be very well respected. You should know who she is. And I'm like, okay. Like, I had no idea at the time. Now I know that she is, you know, kicked down a lot of doors for women, and she's done a lot. But at the time, I had no idea who she was. So
you don't have to name any names, but did you ever get the "Don't you know who I am" line?
Of course. Very not straight up like that, but yeah, sort of. Okay. Sort of, yeah. Or I would get it from one of their friends. Don't you know who that is?
Oh.
Nope.
No.
Should I?
How would you rate your experience being there?
Well, what are we rating exactly? As a learning experience, it was definitely a 10. As a joyful experience with massive amounts of career advancement, it was a 4. I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of around that time where a lot of changes were constantly being influxed, and kind of nothing was the same any day. I do remember like seeing the roster sometimes being there, and then sometimes like you wouldn't see them, you know, again, and it was just very in flux, I guess we could say.
Erratic.
Yeah.
I remember we would come in, we had to be there by 1 o'clock. Of course, we would start live at 8, but for some reason they wanted us there 7 hours early. And at some point, somebody would put the, you know, page up. You did have a page on the wall of the pre-tapes. And you're like, okay, cool. So they finally put it up. This is where we're supposed to be. This is what we're pre-taping. This is when we go get into makeup and know what we're going to do. So either you go and you get into makeup, or you don't go again into makeup, depending on what your order is. And next thing you know, you go back there and it's like there's just like stuff like scribbled out here, ripped off, thrown away. It's like, what's going on? There was like no organization whatsoever. It was like they just people switching things around, just scrapping entire skits. It was trying to you know, to come and get you, and it's like, well, I don't even have any makeup on because I'm not supposed to be up till such and such. Oh no, we moved that around. Well, when did you move it around? We just did it. You need to go now. What? So that happened.
So after WCW, you decided to go train at Killer Kowalski School. How would you rate that experience?
Well, okay, so yeah, I was actually sent there. I wasn't doing a lot with WCW, and I was in that mindset where I felt like, well, I'm only young once, and my career is important. I want to do things instead of sit backstage. If you guys aren't going to use me, let me go, because I'm getting other offers to do things. So Terry Taylor called Jim Ross and said, you should check out this girl. you know, you guys should maybe grab her. So I went out and met with them after WrestleMania, the day after WrestleMania, and they ended up sending me to Kowalski's. Kowalski's was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It might be the hardest thing I've ever done. I've done some really hard things. Yeah, I would say that's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. It's also one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I would probably rate that as even though it was brutal, I would probably say that was a 10. A 10. A lot of learning there. Walter was really good to me.
I can't speak on wrestling school myself, but I know 7 has definitely.
Yeah. I don't mean the school so much, like the training, because I've trained at other places and I wouldn't rate the train, even though it's been good training. I mean like the overall experience. Like for example, Walter was really spiritual, and he was in a holistic medicine long before everybody else was. He was doing the magnets and all the raw foods and all that stuff way before everyone else. And he was one of the original people that started going to the mystical, manifesting and all that stuff. He was one of the original people that believed that we have the power to make our own lives and create our own reality. And he would teach us this. He would teach us that words mean something. The only 4-letter word that you should never, dabble in is the word can't. That is the true swear word, nothing else, things like that. So it was a lot of learning about life and what your limits are, as well as wrestling. So
I'm very interested.
That's awesome. So I do have a question on that. Okay, and I kind of already know the answer, but I want to get it from your take. When you first started training, what was the one thing that hurt the worst? I mean, everything kind of does, but like, what is the one?
Oh my God. I'm trying to think of what didn't fucking hurt. Oh, sorry, can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, when I was training, it was always hitting the ropes.
The ropes.
Yep.
That bruise, right?
Yep.
I had that bruise on my thigh for a long time, to where it hurt. And then I ended up getting a saddlebag on one side, just my right side, it was like a callus on my thigh. That I ended up having to have taken out, but like scar tissue, because I was uneven from because it's just hitting the ropes. It just built up a thing. A lot of guys have it too. They have it right here. So yeah, I would say hitting the ropes was brutal. And just, like bumping too, like just the whole jarring your neck and I don't know, just everything hurt. I just felt like, it feels, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you've been through the worst CrossFit workout ever for like hours. And then you leave CrossFit and you get down the street and you get into a really bad fender bender. And then right after that, somebody rear ends you and then somebody else T-bones you.
Yeah.
And then you go home and try and act normal.
Yeah, no, that's so true.
For a year.
So,
a year. It feels like that for a year.
Yeah. So when we were training, or when we trained, it was 3 days in a row. What was so by Wednesday, they actually, I was hoping it'd be an easy day, because one, we can't move, we're completely exhausted. Like the first thing we do is 300 squats, our knees are already buckled, and then we're going to go in and bump, and our training sessions were 3 hours each day.
Yep.
So I have a question. How often were your intervals?
We did Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. And if you were doing shows, you were allowed to have off Saturday, but you had to bring the tape, because we would do match reviews on Sunday after training, or as part of our training. So we did 4 days a week for, I think it was about 3 hour training. Yeah. So
the first hour was always the cardio or the blow ups, and then the rest was just the bump.
Yeah, I remember I went walking with somebody recently, and I'm walking at a just fast pace and talking.
Yeah.
And he's like, can you just slow down or stop talking? And I was laughing. So I'm like, I didn't realize it's like years of wrestling condition of going fast and talking at the same time. I was like, no, I cannot slow down. No, I'm not going to stop talking. You need to speed up.
Yeah.
and you should be able to talk at a conversational pace at the same time. Your cardio is not that good. Let's go. Right.
Now, we're going to only touch on a few parts here of your indie wrestling career, because I know we can go on for probably an hour or more, talk about all the different places you went. The big ones I want to hit, Jersey All Pro. To me, looking at your accomplishments, that seems to be, I would say, probably one of the best. They kind of gave you free reign, if I'm not mistaken.
Like I said, you guys really did your homework. Yeah, that one ended up being, even though I lived in Boston or New England at that time, Jersey All Pro ended up being my home club, my home fed, whatever you want to call it. Just because they were just really awesome. And they didn't, how do I put this? They didn't treat me like a girl. They treated me like a wrestler. So they let me run with it. I was one of the only females. I think I was the first female ever to have the male tag team belts. And then after they did it, 3PW did it as well. And I appreciated that, especially coming from a model background where I had so many people already just waiting for me to fall on my face, or, I was getting so much hype and I was putting myself under so much pressure that I didn't think I was going to be able to live up to it. So I was busting my ass to try and live up to it and doing way too much. And I was getting hurt. And it was nice to go there and just be able to just wrestle and not have to deal with expectations or anything. They just let me do what I do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So during that time, so like I was a big fan of wrestling from like 98 to about 2005 is kind of when I stopped watching. And then when the pandemic hit, I started watching again and then started training. And then now a photographer for the Indies in the Pacific Northwest. But
that's cool.
Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is you are one of the people that I instantly was like, I need to know more of. And so like back then in Arizona, we didn't really have streaming. We didn't have TNA, which is, so all we had was the online websites and the magazines. And you're one of the ones that I'd always try to follow up until like I stopped watching and all that stuff. So it's really cool. Just kind of meeting you and talking to you about your indie career.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I was on the Indies for a while. Well, it was always funny to me. I would go overseas, and I worked a lot overseas, and I'd work like the big feds in other countries, like in Japan or Mexico, and I would work all the television shows that were the equivalent of WWE over there. IWA and Puerto Rico or AAA, and I would work these giant federations in other countries, then come back home and work my little indies. I was like, man, it's like somebody got me this T-shirt that says I'm huge in Japan. I was like, yeah, theoretically and literally. It was like, it was like, how can I like? How is it this works everywhere else? I'm doing great things everywhere else, and then I come home and I'm like not good enough for my own country. I'm like a nothingness here. So
frustrating.
It was very frustrating, and it just never. And I came to the conclusion a lot of people would always try and figure out what it was, and it's like, oh, it must have been because she did nude stuff. No, a lot of us have done nude things. Matter of fact, WWE would push you into doing nude things for a while. And like Alexis, Mickey James did all the same stuff I did. I know what it was. I think it was just because I was unwilling to tolerate bullshit. And there was a lot of bullshit. So I was unwilling to tolerate anything that was, because I got into it older, and I knew things that the 20-something-year-old, might have said, yeah, okay, I'm just happy to be here. For me, being in my 30s, I was just like, yeah, no, that's not right. So I'm not doing that. So,
Yeah.
or you're gonna have to actually really pay me to do that. Like, for me, that's where I was in life, and I think they were like, yeah, I don't know, you're not cute enough or good enough for that.
Well, speaking of the big paycheck, Carmen Electra's wrestling federation there.
Mm.
That was. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? That experience.
Oh, that was that was something I said no to a million times, and every time I said, well, not a million times, probably at least 8 to 10 times, and every time I said no, they came back with more money, to the point where it was like the Power Girl thing. They kept saying no to Power Girl, and every time the guy would submit it, her boobs got bigger and bigger and bigger. That was what was happening. So the paycheck offer was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where I was just like, wow, those are some big boobs. So I finally was like, all right, what do you want me to do? And where do I throw my clothes? So yeah, it was, they hired me in for one match against Melissa Coates. It was an awful match, because I broke my nose the night before.
Oh.
So I couldn't do anything in the match. The match we originally planned would have been badass, except I took an elbow to the face and had my nose completely rearranged. And then I had to be set and cauterized, and it was stuffed, and packed during the actual match. It was bad. It's really bad. But Canadian healthcare, though, it is not what Americans think. They hooked me up. They did right by me. Don't listen to the media. However, surrounding that match, they also, NWWL also set up for us to do Maxim magazine. For a hot minute, Penthouse turned into Playboy, so we did a Playboy style layout in Penthouse, and we also were covered on it was a True TV. They came in and covered all the rehearsals too. So from that one match, we ended up getting so much coverage, and so I was like, it was really kind of cool.
The last wrestling thing I want to touch on, not too long before you retired, I believe, American Rampage Wrestling. I believe that was in Europe, when you went on tour with RVD, Sabu, Sid Vicious, and Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
What was it like to kind of reconnect with them later in life?
It was mostly a lot of fun. I had a really good time. I did 2 different tours with them. One was a really long tour. I was gone for over a month. We were just on the road nonstop. I remember just not even knowing where I was when I woke up in the morning. It was like, hello, Cleveland, it's just like, this is Boston. Yeah, I did. We were all over it was funny too. They named the company American Rampage Wrestling, even though the only Americans that were there were us, and everybody else was European and Irish, mostly Irish. But yeah, we did all of France. We did Germany, we did Romania and Bulgaria. We went through England for a minute. It was interesting to go through the communist countries too, to see what communist and former communist countries look like and how they were. That was a real learning experience. But working with those guys was great. I mean, RVD, I've always gotten along with him well, and they were good. They were good guys. So, there was, 1 or 2 that I could have done without, but the ones you mentioned were great.
Yeah. Seven, you got anything else wrestling wise before we move on?
So I did recently watch your match. I was showing Sarah your match with in TNA Desire, I think it was, or Desiree?
Oh God!
Desire.
Also her smash. She
But
started training. She was brand new, and TNA was telling us, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. There were things that we should not have been doing in that match for our capability levels, shall we say. Yeah.
The Frankensteiner, was it?
That was it.
Because you guys actually really pulled it off, and I was like, oh my, because back then, like nowadays, okay, we see it like everybody, the girls weren't doing it back then.
I know.
Like it was so cool for, you know, little me watching the women wrestling who have always like looked up to so much, being able to do that, be giving the opportunity to even be doing that. And I think that's automatically what I was like, oh, I need to know everything about these guys.
Yeah, I think she had, like I said, she just started, and they wanted her to do that, and she said, I haven't done this very much, and I was like, I've taken it a million times from guys, girls. I'm like, I'm fine with taking it. I will, you know, I will catch you, and I will go, and it will be fine. Trust me. I don't think she trusted me, so she slipped the first time she tried to do it. And I was like, just hit me, keep hitting me, keep hitting me, keep hitting me. Okay, do it again. I'm going to catch you. All right, let's go. So that's how it went. Like, if there's one thing I can do, I know I can catch and bump anybody. So that I've got people. So on that, but yeah. But thanks. I was hoping that match would go a little bit smoother, but
yeah.
It was
At least you didn't break your nose in that match.
No, yep, I came out of that one solid. So yep.
Let's talk a little bit about Kill City Cup.
Yeah.
We've seen that movie, great movie. You're fantastic in it. You know, it's, you know, your little faction. Tell me what your initial thoughts were when you were first approached about this project.
I knew Luke in passing, but I didn't know him very well.
Mm-hmm.
But when so I didn't know if we get stuff all the time, we get offers all the time. So when the thing came through to do it, and I was like, all right, yeah, we'll see if it actually happens. And then he said the magic words. He's like, could you dress up as a Viking? I was like, I'll be there. I'm like, I'm in, whatever. He's like, yeah, we have a guy here that does a warrior thing, and we thought you would because I've seen your Viking and your cosplay stuff. We thought you'd fit well with him. I'm like, I'll be there. What time? So
what time we start?
Right. So I was surprised that they had, you know, everybody doing different characters, even, you know, people that we knew well from other shows, you know, AEW and Ring of Honor and WWE. They still changed them and let them do all these different characters. It was very comic book, video game-esque. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really cool. I remember being in there, and they had a really good photographer, and they had a really good makeup artist. And I was like, wow, they're actually spending money on this. I was impressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that was what did me. I was like, you can be a character. I'm like, I'll be there. I can do whatever I want with a character. Okay.
Now, looking back at the cast, who's one character when you saw them come out, I'm like, now this is good. This is going to be pretty good or pretty funny.
I probably have to say Jimmy Jacobs did his thing. There's a couple of them.
I thought the Zip Monk was really interesting as well.
Yes, really. I enjoyed the entire show.
Yes,
I really did. It was entertaining.
You know, when I first talked to Luke, getting an injury set up, I'm like, all right, let me watch this movie. You know, it's kind of head down for background noise. And about 5 minutes in, I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to really pay attention. This is really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I watched the debut. They wanted us on the chat that night, and I was like, all right. And you know, my friend and I were sitting there. She was watching it too. She's like, this is actually really good. And I was like, it is, right? Doesn't feel like so. It doesn't. That's really weird. So I'm so used to indie stuff being really indie,
right?
And you know, they did a really good job with it.
What do you think about a sequel? Are you hoping for one? Do you want to be in a sequel?
Yeah, I would love that. That would be great. Yeah. I think I'm all about it.
What about, you know, being in this now that you're seeing all the indie, you know, movie festival awards that are popping up, that the movie's winning? What's your reaction?
I think Luke has done a lot of hard work on this, and I think any awards that come from it, he deserves. I know it was a team thing, but he in particular has put a lot behind it, and I think whatever's coming, he's earned it.
Definitely.
So
as far as cosplaying, what's been your, I follow you on social medias. I see you're doing the countdown to Halloween. What's been your favorite cosplay?
Oh, I used to have a Punisher costume that I loved, and then it kind of fell apart, and I haven't replaced it yet. So I love the character because it's not a superhero. It's just some pissed off dude. So, and it's like, I can relate to that. I can understand it. Motivated by irritation and revenge. Instead of, having gotten crossbred with a, spider or, something, unrelatable. But I like Jessica Rabbit too, because it's such an easy costume for me. I get called that even when I'm wearing sweatpants at the grocery store. It's like, oh, you're Jessica Rabbit. I'm like, I'm not, but thank you. I love all the Red Sonja stuff. Poison Ivy is fun. Everybody seems to like Black Widow a lot. Thundra is one of my favorites. She's a very obscure character with Marvel and She-Hulk, and some people know her, most people don't. Whenever I wear the costume, they're like, is that like Flash? And I'm like, no, that's not Flash. But in the Marvel universe, she is actually a female wrestler who wrestles Thing all the time, and it's kind of fitting. So yeah, those are some of my favorites there.
I say I'm more of the mainstream comics. Seven is more of our more deep into comics in the group.
Yeah,
probably knows what you're talking about.
Actually, I wasn't familiar with. You said her name was Thundra.
Thundra.
I'm gonna have to research that one. I'm not familiar. I wasn't familiar with that, and I go way back with comics. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might appreciate it if you like some of the more obscure stuff.
Yeah, I like really random, weird stuff. It just fits my personality.
Me too. I get it.
So we usually end our podcast with a bunch of like random rapid fire questions. I do want to ask you one other thing before we get to that. Going from like one end of the spectrum to the other, former Playboy model, wrestler, MMA enthusiast, all the way down to children's book author. How did that come about?
There you go. Because I'm a child. I am. I don't know. I never grew up. I wear costumes for a living, play fight, and writing a children's story isn't that far-fetched from everything else I do, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. I like the idea of this particular story was about not being in the right place at the right time, I guess, not having the right fit. So it's about a corgi who is in a farm, and because it's called Monty, a tail of no tail, and because he doesn't have a tail or long legs, he doesn't fit in, and he's considered ugly. And he needs to leave the farm and go elsewhere to find his tribe, to find his talents and his tribe, to realize that, hey, you know what? I'm not ugly, and it's fine that I don't have a tail. It's fine that I've got short legs, because I can do these other things, and this is where I fit in over here. So it's a story of the queen's jewels get stolen when she comes to town to pick up new farm. She comes in to get new farm animals for her stock, and the fox that steals the jewels takes off, and nobody can follow the fox because the tails and the legs are way too long. The fox is ducking and dodging through everything, except for Monty, the one with no tail and no legs, or short legs. So he finds his way, and she ends up, and instead of taking all the farm animals who picked on him and told him, he was ridiculous and he shouldn't be there, and he looked dumb because he's got no tail and he doesn't fit in, she ended up picking him instead and taking him home.
I love that.
and bonus points for a corgi.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll end with our rapid fire questions. Seven, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so what I do is on my portion, I have 5, and I randomly pick them from a website, and they have 250 questions. And literally, I'll just scroll, and then wherever my finger stops, that is the question. So they're going to be random and completely weird. So let's start off. How long do you think you would survive a zombie apocalypse?
Oh, depends. I could be like last person standing, or I could go first if there's any wasps. I'm allergic to them, so
Okay.
it could. It's like, I don't know. It could go one way or the other. If we're depending on just pure survival, I think I could outlast a lot of people.
Okay.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Musical instrument that is that has the most annoying sound to you.
Wow. Maybe the banjo.
Okay.
Depending.
Which meal of the day is the most important?
Dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be breakfast for dinner. Breakfast for dinner. Brinner.
Yeah.
Have you ever met your doppelganger?
No, but everybody thinks it's the girl that plays Jean Grey.
Oh,
Famke.
Yeah.
I forget how you say her name.
Okay. How do you feel about that? Like, do you kind of agree?
Yeah, I guess why not wear my glasses? I can kind of see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last question for me is, what is the weirdest gift you have ever given somebody?
A fleshlight.
Okay. That's totally fair.
All right, so I'll get my couple in here. This is one I usually tend to ask, a lot of people. I always find it really interesting. When you're traveling on the road, what's the best road trip snack?
Oh, right. Any kind of beef stick, beef jerky.
Yes.
Yeah, that type of thing. Cashews.
Do you have a favorite type of beef jerky?
No, I don't. Just anything that tastes good. Or coffee. There's coffee. That's a good road trip snack too.
Mm-hmm. What would be your dream vacation if money was no object?
Ooh. It would probably be a trip. Oh God, there's so many places. It would probably be an ongoing trip to a lot of places, like in Europe and Asia.
Mm-hmm.
It'd probably be like one of those things where you just keep going, realistically.
I always say like a food trip through like Italy and France would be just amazing.
Spain.
Yes.
And then a really bad one would be a food trip through like Ireland.
That'd be a drinking trip.
Yes, exactly.
Whiskey trip. Last question. What do you think is the best looking championship title belt that you've seen, whether you won it or not?
Ooh.
Which one is your favorite?
Oh, I was going to joke around and say the hardcore title. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I was always partial to the Intercontinental, I guess. It might not be the best looking one, but it's the one that I like the most, I think.
Okay.
Just held the most. I don't know. I like the Ring of Honor belt too.
The new ones or the older ones?
Old ones.
Yes.
Yeah, the old ones. I haven't seen the new ones.
I like one of my favorites was always the NWA women's title. That has the picture of the champion on there as well. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. That's it's classic, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that one's still in use in NWA.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still do it.
I was back there a few months ago, and they're belts. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we'll sign off here. Hopefully, we can get you on again another time. We got always plenty more to talk about.
Cool.
What would you like to plug before we hop off?
Oh, my cheap plugs. Yes. Well, I guess you can see more of me. As everybody has mentioned, I'm doing the countdown to Halloween. And that's on Patreon, April Hunter, Twitter, April Hunter. And you can also catch me on Instagram, Real April Hunter. And if you want to catch my show, The A Show is live Wednesday nights, twitch.tv, The A Show, and we have replays as well. So join me. We have fun with it.
Great. Well, April, thank you for joining us. I had a great time. Hope you did as well.
So did I. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for doing so much research. You made everything easier. So thank you for that.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. And
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.